Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host, who is always one step ahead when it comes to the latest digital trends, whether it's TikTok dances or viral challenges, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. I'm Sean Callanan, and welcome to episode 377 of Sports Geek. In this CEO series episode, I chat with Christine Finnegan. She's the CEO of the Tasmania JackJumpers. If you're listening for the first time, I'm Sean Callanan, your host. You can email me, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com, or reach me on socials, Sean Callanan, or at SportsGeek is where you can find me. I'm looking to take the Digital Dollars Workshop on the road, either for private or public workshops. If you're interested in either getting your team involved across digital data sponsorship, or you want to help your partners activate, that's exactly what Digital Dollars is for. Please reach out, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com, if you're interested in a Digital to Dollars workshop. As always, you can head to sportsgeekhq.com for every single episode of Sports Geek, as well as our throwback episodes. I hope you're enjoying those dips into the archive of the Sports Geek library. But now, let's get into my chat with Christine Finnegan from the Tasmanian JackJumpers. Very happy to welcome Christine Finnegan. She's the CEO of the Tasmania JackJumpers, the current NBL champions. Christine, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
Not a problem. Well, we will get into the recent success of the JackJumpers in this interview, but I always start trying to find out people's sports business origin story. How did you get your foray into the world of sports?
Yeah, look, I've always had a real passion for sport. I grew up playing competitive tennis and really enjoyed the sporting landscape and what it does for people. So pretty determined when I finished school and university to then go on and work in sports. So the very first job I got, fortunately, was at Tennis Australia, which was amazing given my background in tennis, and I worked there for 6 or 7 years, and it's just continued on from there. But a great place to start in the governing body, I guess, and then as my career's progressed, I've gone more into the clubland sort of space, and that's where I really found my happy place.
You sort of mentioned that. You've in Australia, we talk about the different sports and in the football space and the different codes, and you've been lucky enough to work across, pretty much all of them. Working at the Melbourne Storm, working on the Players Association side of the AFLPA, also working at Super Rugby at the Rebels. Sort of in those commercial and marketing roles, you sort of said you found your space, found your happy space in clubland, as we like to call it. What was the thing that drew you to clubland?
I think it's the passion of the people you represent. People really get out of bed for their club more than they do for other industries and products. Like, it really means a lot to them. And I've written the really high highs of clubland, and I've written the really low lows of it. And regardless of which space you're operating in, there is something very special about it and how people feel about their club and how it galvanises community. And I'm really big on that. I guess I've got a fairly social justice mindset in terms of belonging and giving people, a place to come together. And I guess Clubland does that, I think, better than anybody.
And so your current club now, Tasmania, you came into the role of Tasmania firstly as Chief Commercial and Customer Officer before the tip off effectively of the JackJumpers. What were those early days like at the JackJumpers?
I've got to say it was fairly daunting. I mean, coming into a brand new organisation, into a state that really didn't have many touch points into NBL, the sport itself, and then having to basically educate them on the sport, the competition, and then the role the JackJumpers would play in that as its 10th and newest franchise. So it was a big job in terms of commercially selling the brand to, partners, members, corporates. Really trying to get people to buy into this sports and entertainment product was going to be like nothing they'd ever seen. And so it was a big job, and there was a lot of pressure in the early days because of the COVID delays and the way we were operating in a COVID environment. I actually left Melbourne during the second lockdown in COVID, went through hotel quarantine to get here. And then once I hit the ground, really had, not even 12 months from landing until our first game. So busiest 12 months of my life, most rewarding 12 months of my life. 8 partners had signed here, had signed to the jumper before we even signed a player. So there was a thirst and a hunger and a real want for this team to come into Tasmania and so many brands wanting to get behind it.
And how important was that, I guess, that connection to Tasmania and effectively being seen as reigniting that professional sports market in Tasmania, because it hadn't had a lot of sports. I mean, cricket had been there and Hobart Hurricanes had done a good job, but there really hadn't been a lot of sports based in Tassie. There've been people that had done it part-time, but none that have really said, hey, we're gonna be here. Was that part of your initial plan going to the local market?
It was actually part of the appeal of going for the job. I was very familiar with the Tasmanian market. I'd never lived here, but I'd had a lot of exposure to it and knew that it was a foundation football state, that it had produced these amazing footballers over many, many years, and yet they still didn't have this team that represented them in any sport on the national and international stage besides that short period of BBL. So I knew there was an opportunity to bring something very special into this state and had that insight that it was a sports-loving, state and that there would be a real response to it if we did it well and we did it properly and engaged our community right from the start. So there was a lot of strategy behind everything we did, both from a brand point of view, fan engagement point of view, and then, of course, from a commercial point of view. What we strategically decided to do was investigate every single business in Tasmania that had a national or international touch point or profile and basically go to them and say, we can be the vehicle for you to take your brand off the island and drive it nationally and internationally. And that's been hugely successful for brands such as the Spirit of Tasmania, Willie Smith Tasmania, Bulk Nutrients particularly have done very, very well out of it. They've seen huge growth. I mean, they're already a big brand on the mainland, but they saw huge growth once the partnership really took off. So really proud of those alliances and everybody's sort of grown with us on the journey.
And so sometimes when you go to an established team and there is, a commercial department, there is a marketing department, there's a membership department, and sometimes it becomes fractured and everyone's working the same thing. But when you came in, being commercial and customer, you had that wider role. Did it help you keep things aligned?
100%. And look, I came in with that background. I'd obviously been the Chief Commercial and Customer Officer at St Kilda. I'd done those roles at Storm and other places. So I was very familiar with what needed to be built. But certainly we all had to come from the same starting point and we had to sing from the same hymn sheet. And where this brand or this club has been particularly lucky is that we had a coach that came in that got that. He got the off-court stuff as well as he got the on-court stuff. And he's played an amazing role in helping us build those programs off the court. It's always been a matter of tell me where you want me, what you need me to do, and I'm there. And we all know his passion for the island, but having a startup that's had that sort of assistance from the head coach, you really can't buy that sort of, passion and involvement.
I mean, you talk there about the coach, Scott Roth. One thing that I was looking into for this interview was him setting up bloodline members. Tell us a little bit about what that was, how it sort of came about and why it has helped the connectedness with the state.
Well, I guess both him and I came into this state and we knew that there was a bit of a north-south mentality and that it was quite a fractured sort of relationship between the north and the south. And we were both very aligned that we didn't ever want to talk about either of those things, that it was to be a team for all of Tasmania. So one of the very first things that Scott did was engage the basketball community across the state. And that is all the people that had represented Tasmania, previously had worn a Devils jersey, etc. And he wanted to make sure that they felt part of the community and the decision-making and what we were doing to build this team in Tasmania. So he basically researched every player that had sort of put on the jersey and it contributed significantly, mostly on the court, but some administrators off the court. And he went and visited each of those people personally and asked them to become a bloodline member. And that's been hugely successful because it means that everybody's pulling in the same direction. Nobody's sort of trying to undermine what the JackJumpers are achieving, because they're actually part of the community right from the start that's helping us grow this club and this brand. And I think that Scott doing that right from the start has been incredibly helpful to where we are right now.
And so looking at, you've tackled bringing Tasmanians together and then looking at the commercial piece. And then the other part is where do we get the fans, that fan building piece, where do we get our season ticket holders? How did you go about going to market, without players signed, with just, colours and logos being launched and saying, hey, become a season, come on our ride? How did that initial foray to the Tasmanian market go?
Well, we were very aware that this is still a very high-touch environment. So it wasn't going to be a bunch of emails that went out or a bunch of social media posts. It was actually going to have to be very, very high-touch for us. So the first thing that we actually did was build a mascot. Jack the Jumper became a very, very important part of our fan engagement piece in the very early days. Once Scott Roth arrived, which was essentially 3 months after we'd sort of got on the ground here, Scott and the mascot and our head of community hit the road, and they just went all around the state, visiting schools, visiting basketball associations, talking to people in the streets, visiting anybody that basically we thought could be part of this community. And so that was very successful for us. People began in a real affinity with Jack the Jumper. We created his own social media platforms, and then Jack became a big cult figure in himself. So between Scott and Jack, really they were the two people that were the front people of this brand, while the rest of us were working in the background to build the obvious things that happen behind the scenes to build programs out to make them successful.
I mean, you've struck gold with Scott as a coach, but do you think his off-court efforts and what he's been doing, off the court has almost been just as valuable, if not more valuable, especially for a startup team?
One thing I've really learned, and I've worked in a lot of clubs, and one thing I've really learned is your best operating clubs have the administration and the high performance unit working hand in glove. If you've got those two things working together, and if your messaging's the same and you're all buying into the same values and the same, and the same promise, then you're going to be successful. So we drove those things from the inside out. So Scott was part of those initial conversations. What do we want our values to be? What do we want our mission to be? And so getting him involved right from the smart start meant there was buy-in. So we're not just saying, this is our marketing message for 2023. Make sure you let the players know this is what they've got to do. It was driven by him and his high-performance department, obviously aided by the front office. But for this club, I think that the difference in every club I've worked for, and a lot of synergies, I guess, with the Melbourne Storm, is that there is a seamless relationship between everybody in the club, and that's, the coach, the chair, the CEO, and all the staff, front office and back office. And that's what I think has been the recipe of success for this club.
And so then getting from that startup phase and setting up and selling the first tickets and getting to that, the first game and the first season, you're getting into operational mode. How have you built on that initial success to get the cheeks in the seats, get the sponsors to support? How have you gauged the success off the court?
Hey, look, Sean, I guess I do have to say, there's been a little bit of luck on our side. I mean, when I think about the first game, which was a sellout, went into double overtime, Sam McDaniel shot the first basket. He was the only Tasmanian-born player we had on the court. We win in double overtime, and the fairy tale started right there and then. The arena was actually ready the day before. Like we went right to the wire on everything. We had our first win, and it just grew and grew and grew from there. And people that had gone to that first game said, "Wow, what an entertainment experience! We loved it." And so we quickly found the next game and sold out, the next game and sold out. And all of a sudden we're in this position where, here we are 3 seasons later, and we haven't had a game that we haven't sold out. And, we've got a real supply and demand issue here. And when you talk about problems off the court, the biggest one I need to solve is supply and demand without putting too much pressure on the government to expand the arena again. How do I take the brand to the people if the people can't come to me? We have 3,500 people sitting on a paid waiting list. How do we start to get them through the pipeline and through the games just to experience once or twice, So our headaches are probably different to a lot, but there's still problems, and there's still problems that need to be solved. So working with data, working out how we can maximise, the daily ticket sales versus membership, all of those things are playing into the way we're thinking right now.
I mean, it is something, you've got to be very wary of because, coming from, especially from the AFL world and, the Storm where membership and season ticket holders were paramount, when you're very successful and your stadium is full, then you're actually restricting the amount of people that can consume your product. And so trying to get that mix right to be able to make sure people can experience, what it is like to be at a JackJumpers game. One thing I wanted to sort of tap into, you being new to the NBL when you came to Tasmania, but you've also mentioned multiple times sports and entertainment. Like there has been a real push for the entertainment product of the NBL, both on the court, but then the whole experience of game day. How much of that has been something that's, I guess, a little bit new, but like how the NBL has really tackled, the fan experience overall?
And I think that's where the NBL have very much placed themselves in that family market, because if you don't necessarily like basketball, and we have so many people say to us, I've never watched a game of basketball until I came to a JackJumpers game, but then they've come and then there's dancing and there's music and there's all of this sort of high-octane entertainment. So even if you didn't originally come for the basketball, there's always something in there for everybody, and it's the giveaways and it's the crowd interaction. And basketball's in that unique space where we play indoor all the time, so we're not subject to weather conditions, we're not subject to the elements the way other sports are. So we can actually create that product and continue to hone that product very well because we know the conditions we're going to be operating on week in, week out. And I think that's a huge advantage. So, but I must say the NBL are going from strength to strength in that space, in that entertainment space. We're always thinking of what else or what next. And the great thing about what we do in that entertainment space, it gives great interaction and integration for our partners. So every segment we do, there can be an integrated product or message into that. And I think that that's hugely important for the growth of the game and growth of revenue of the game through partnerships.
And you mentioned before, and you said it was luck, and I'm not a big believer in luck. I think a lot of hard work brings a lot of luck. I think, you make your own luck, a lot of it. But you've had some really good success hitting the ground early, on court in your first two seasons. And then, if we want to talk fairy tales, to get the championship and like you've got the picture behind you, defended the island to win the championship. What was the feeling in Tasmania as that playoff series progressed and you did take the title?
I'd always heard in my rugby days about, the All Blacks, and when they won, the whole place was up, and if they lost, it had the highest absentee rate from work. And I always found that hard to reconcile with. But in a small place like Tasmania, I've got to say, I'm not comparing us to the All Blacks, except to say that this team means so much to this place. And I have no doubt that the day after we won the championship, everyone was walking a little bit taller on their way to work. And, obviously I was in Melbourne for that, and I came back for the celebration. And it was only that week that I really had the time to walk the streets of the city. And I could not believe how many shop fronts had Defend the Island with a poster of the JackJumpers in it. These tiny little shops to these, even Myer in the city, they all had got behind this. And that was just true across the state. Schools, businesses, community organisations, it didn't matter. Like they were all big and part of this story. And we said, that we are the team for all of Tasmania. And we really wanted them to feel that we were out there playing for them. And then if and when we actually did, fortunately, win that trophy, we won it for the people of Tasmania. And I do think everybody's walking taller still because of that.
I mean, those scenes and those shots of, the watch parties back in Tassie when that game was happening, is, foundational, obviously, and it's still in a young franchise. You're still in startup mode. You're still in, just finished year 3 and you've had this success. What are the next steps that you want to take to build on that championship success and accelerate some of your goals off court?
Well, if I take you back to year 1, a lot of people, we made the grand final in year 1. We all know that how that team was built and then to go all the way to the grand final. And I think there was a bit of a feeling that may have been a one-off and that surely couldn't be repeated. So then we obviously came third in our second season and we've won it in our third season. So there's now this expectation on the team that with the team taking the court will come success. So I guess we've got to manage that as best we can, but as well as that, build sustainable programs both on and off the court. Build a really sustainable and thriving high performance program so on court success can continue for many years to come. And I've got no reason to believe that it can't. We've got Scott Roth locked in for another 3 years. And I've spoken to him a lot about building a legacy around about not just what he's done on the court, but what he's done off the court. So from a high performance point of view, that's great. From a commercial sustainability point of view, we're ticking all the right boxes. This club is in profit and it continues to work really hard to do so. And we're not going to rely on grand final appearances to do that, but they are certainly the icing on the cake. So all of those things that are working hand in glove together. So those two strategic pillars will always determine our competence. And then what we do in our community, how we treat our staff and how we grow the game will always determine our warmth. And if we can keep competence and warmth in that high quartile on both sides of those equations, then I think this club can sustain success for many years to come.
And one of the things you are looking at, you talked about high performance there. Scott and the team have done a terrific job with the current facilities, but you're looking for a home to really house that high performance facility and to really level up what you're doing for basketball in Tasmania?
It's been really topical in the last week because it needed to be brought to a head. So part of getting an NBL licence is assuring that the team has a high-performance facility to train in, and that was part of the agreement with the state government when we came here, as well as redeveloping the home of where we play. So two of those boxes were ticked, but the third box has really dragged along, and it's been mainly due to infrastructure and site issues. It's really out of the control of a lot of people, but we can't continue to go around and try and attract players. I mean, we're playing in a very professional league. This league is attracting global attention from players wanting to come out here, and we need to be able to compete for that talent. So training out of a shared facility at certain times of the day and week and sharing it with volleyball and pickleball and all those other sports that make up this wonderful community is great. But it's not, we need a facility that we can own ourselves. We need those high performance, factors in our facility, and everybody would understand that's worked in a professional sporting club. It's almost a rite of passage. So we have brought that to a head. We have found a location. We're doing feasibility on 2 different locations within Kingston, and we should announce very shortly when we're turning the first bit of soil. It's certainly been a passion of mine since I've been CEO to make sure that building gets up and running.
And then, I mean, the other thing that it does then offer you is another piece of the puzzle, both commercially, but then also, potentially to engage your fans, but also that high performance piece, which is, attracting the best talent. We'll see, future NBA stars drafted out of the NBL year on year with current programs, and you want to see some of those players that have come out of your programs head to those bigger leagues.
That's absolutely right, Sean, and you've hit the nail on the head. We have 5 strategic pillars to our business. On-court success, we know what a high-performance centre does for on-court success. Commercial sustainability and viability, we know what that will do for us being able to have our own facility to bring our people into. Growing the game of basketball and community engagement, well, that facility will play a huge role in both of those things. And then, of course, a great place to work. So bring our players and our staff into one facility instead of being spread over 3 different locations in Tasmania. It's just those things that will change and really make this club work together even bigger and stronger than we have already. And I can see great things ahead when that gets built.
And one of the things that's a little bit more unique in the NBL space is the investment from private investors into clubs. We spoke to Tommy Greer recently with the Phoenix and some of their international investment from NBA players and other afar. It's something on the radar. Is that something that you're working on and positioning the JackJumpers to take on this investment into more sporting clubs that's happening globally?
Well, yeah, and Larry Kesselman, who obviously owns us at the moment, was very, very specific about that when he brought us in. He will help clubs get started and he will help clubs embed themselves into the competition. But once they are up and running, he wants out. He's obviously running the competition and he doesn't want to be perceived or thought to be conflicted. And so for him, it's about getting the club up and running, getting it to the position such as the JackJumpers are in now, and then going out and seeking both national and international investment for that. So Larry really concentrates on that international piece. I do a lot of work nurturing, I guess, the Tasmanian piece, the local piece. There is a lot of local interest in this club, and I think Larry's been quite vocal about the fact he'd like 30% at least of this club to be Tasmanian owned. And I feel very, very confident, having been part of many, many of those conversations, that will happen. And I think Tasmanians want that to happen. There's something very Tasmanian about this club, and I think it'll just keep that I guess that sentiment there forever.
And do you think it is a real part of, like you said, that connection to the community? You walking down the street and seeing all of those posters and streamers around in all the different shops, and how quickly the JackJumpers have been adopted by Tasmanians to be seen as Tasmanians team, being one of the key appeals, at least for the Tasmanian investors, but also internationally to be able to invest in a growing league like the NBL?
I do think so, and I think, Scott Roth and myself are not Tasmanian, but we understand this landscape. I guess it's as well as anybody. It's a very authentic, humble state, and they go about their business in a very quiet manner. And what we've tried to do is create a club that looks like the people we represent and also the people we talk to on a daily basis. So Scott, when he says defend the island, that's coming from a very heartfelt position, in that when he's been here, he's seen how Tasmanians love Tasmania. He's seen how they've been overlooked on the national and international sporting stage, and he wants to do his bit, as I do, and all our staff, to make sure that this club is truly Tasmanian and is always going to keep that authentic and humble feel around this vision to defend the island.
So 3 years in, you've had the on-court success, but now if you put your vision out, 3 to 5 years out, where do you want to see the JackJumpers in 3 to 5 years' time?
Look, we're definitely talking about sustained success. We always said we never came in the competition to make up the numbers. We haven't won a championship for that to be our only championship. We need to keep building. And what Scott and I have agreed is that we'll enjoy this championship until such time as our pre-season commences. And then that was last season. And we're very proud of what we achieved, but it was last season, and we start to really cast our eyes forward on what the next season. We do have a 3 and 5 year strategic plan in place, and we know what that looks like. We've probably fast-tracked our on-court success a little bit earlier than we thought we would, but that doesn't mean we have to recalibrate everything. It just means that we continue to strive to what we thought was possible in years 4, 5, 6 and 7, and I know that can happen. Because all the plans are in place, all the building blocks are in place. We've got very good people in this club that work very hard. And I think if we just keep doing what we're doing, keep walking the walk, not talking the talk, we will enjoy sustained success.
And another thing I want to ask you, just recently the NBL announced a new media deal, and there'll be more NBL games on free-to-air. As someone, CEO and still wears a commercial hat, at club level, what does that kind of extra exposure and extra eyeballs mean to you at Clubland?
Oh, look, it's enormous, and we all know how media deals play into the success of competitions and therefore clubs. So getting more free-to-air exposure is amazing. Can I say that I think the competition deserves it, the standard of the competition? I mean, the way our 5-game series played out in the finals, it was very exciting, and people jumped on board, and people are starting to really get on board this competition, and they want to be able to access it on these platforms. So I think it's a great win for the NBL. I think there's a lot more to do in this space, and I think there's a lot more growth in this space. But I think people deserve in this country to see high-calibre basketball played on its home soil on free-to-air television, and I think that's going to grow and grow and grow as we move forward. But I was certainly very buoyed and excited about the announcement, as I know everybody at Clubland was.
Yeah, it's a special one, especially when you're putting all that work into the community to make it easily accessible to that fan to go, I saw Jack at a clinic, and then there's the friction for them to go watch it has been reduced. It then will create, unfortunately for you, will create more supply. More demand, I should say. But that is a problem that can be solved. But it's really important for, I guess, the growth of the game, across Australia.
But that does play into demand as well. Having access to free-to-air platforms plays into demand. At least people that might not be able to go through the subscription channels can now actually, at least absorb a game on television. And so that only helps clubs like ours that are really struggling to find more seats, etc., to put more eyeballs on this product. So, I'm really, as I said, buoyed by the announcement. I really do hope that the NBL is taken seriously in this space as we move forward, because it is a great product and it's growing. The at-game audiences are growing all around the country, going very, very well. So let's hope that we can really continue to build on that through broadcast.
So the other thing for Tasmania is that it seems to be now being a target for sport, when we've got the AFL planning on entering a team and effectively being neighbours and competitors in market. How do you prepare for that challenge and get ready to take on, when the AFL potentially starts its 19th team in Tasmania?
I think there's a willingness on both sides to be neighbours rather than competitors. I think we're better together. It is a small place. It's a 550,000 population across the state. So economies of scale and where we can work together, I think, are going to be better for both organisations. We've obviously got the inside running. We've come in her early and we've had early success. However, the juggernaut of the AFL is the juggernaut of the AFL, and they've got a much bigger infrastructure behind them to help them be successful. The recent announcement of Brendan Gale as CEO is a great announcement for the AFL and also for Tasmania. So we see a lot of great things happening for them, and we're in conversations with them every week about different things we can do together, sharing ideas. There's been no, you can't have any of that. Scott Roth has spent an enormous amount of time with Jack Rewalt. I've spent enormous time with Jack and Kath McCann. We just want to share ideas. And, ultimately, if we both truly say we care about Tasmania, then we need to do this together and we need to do it well. We have very little crossover to seasons. So we've spoken about how we can fit into summer and they can fit into winter, and those hearts and minds can combine for both basketball and AFL. And you might see this as a really unique thing in Australian sport, how two different codes actually work hand in glove.
I mean, that's the thing. It's not like game days are going to be clashing and those kind of things. And there's multiple cities in Australia that have multiple sporting codes. And, the fact that the Tassie sports fan now has multiple options in front of them. And I also think the fact that there'll be multiple people in market will, grow the level of entertainment and the options and the facilities and that around the scene. So I think it will be a win-win for all. But I do think having the inside running and building that community now, and a few wins would not have hurt the JackJumpers at all.
No, a few wins definitely help, but we kind of try not to focus too much on just the winning. I think there's been so many people that have contributed across the club in so many ways to help build this to what it is today, and it has become a very loved club here in Tasmania, and it's got a really nice following outside of Tasmania as well. I think people really enjoyed the series. I think they like the way that the JackJumpers go about their business on the court and off the court. So, we've built this nice tribe of people that follow us, and we want to continue to build on that. And the best way we can do that is, one, absolutely be competent, in our finances, be competent in the way we go about winning and losing, but also keep that warmth alive and well, and really just continue to do what we've done well, and really just try and build on that. And then just have this mindset of continuous improvement. It's something Larry talks about all the time. He really drums it into this business. It's something that I truly believe in, that you can always get better, you can always learn off somebody else. And so there is that mindset in here that, yes, we've done well, but let's hold ourselves at 6 or 7 out of 10 and see what's possible.
Well, you've set the bar very high, and I really do appreciate your time. I want to get to the Sports Geek Closing 5. Christine, do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
It was a Davis Cup match, I think, when I was about 10 years old.
Who was playing? Do you remember? It was Australia was playing somewhere? Was it at Kooyong?
Australia was playing the USA, and I just remember McEnroe. I can't remember, sadly, who was playing for Australia. I was a big John McEnroe fan growing up.
Well, McEnroe is good enough to remember. You would have been to a lot of different sports events in your time. Do you have a favourite food or a go-to food at a sports event?
Oh, how could you go past the meat pie with sauce at a sporting event?
It is a common answer. I should actually have a meat pie sponsorship on this podcast that gets answered that much. What is the first app you open in the morning?
Well, it's usually the news app. So it's usually like Google News. All my news comes up first thing. I try to get across news before I get into the office so I know exactly what's going on, not just in the world of sport, but in the world itself and how that's going to play into my day. So I'd have to say that's probably the first app I open is my news app. Is
there someone that you follow that the podcast listeners should give a follow, whether it be a colleague or someone you might follow on social media or potentially an author?
Oh, look, I've got to know Jack Rewalt really, really well over my little journey here in Tasmania, and he's got a great podcast he does called 2MI, which is it talks about people, but it talks, and they interview people, but they actually want to know who they are as people first, and it really delves into mental health and a whole lot of things that I'm quite passionate about. So I'd suggest to everybody have a listen to 2MI because there's some great people and great guests on that.
Terrific. We will put a link in the show notes. And lastly, and you can answer this firstly, personally, from your point of view, but then also from the JackJumpers point of view, what social media platform is your MVP?
I would have to say the GWS Giants. I cannot get enough of them. The way they go about their building their tribes is amazing. Is that was the question?
That's a good answer. But I was actually asking, and I think the GWS guys are doing a terrific job. But what platform is working for you? Insta's
obviously our biggest platform in terms of collaboration and integration. That's definitely where we get the most. Followers, etc. from. But I mean, we use all the platforms for different reasons. We obviously use LinkedIn for more a B2B kind of platform, but we use all of them. We're not big on TikTok yet, but that's coming our way with the JackJumpers. We need to build up those type of platforms as well.
Great to hear. Christine, thank you very much for taking the time. If there is someone who listened to this podcast and enjoyed it, which I'm sure they will, and want to get in touch, what's the best way for them to do so?
Anyone can contact me here at the JackJumpers. I'd love to hear from anybody. That'd be great.
Terrific. We will put a link to your LinkedIn in the show notes. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast. Hopefully, I will see JackJumpers in action again in the season, in the next season, and enjoy the off season where you will remain NBL champions until the season starts, as you said.
Thanks, Sean. We'd love you to come down and experience the game. It's pretty special here, and just to see the way Tasmania embrace it would be great.
Looking to help your digital or sponsorship team? Book in for a Pick My Brain session with Sean Callanan to help your team level up. Book now at sportsgeekhq.com/pickmybrain.
Thanks again to Christine. You can connect with her on LinkedIn and follow all things JackJumpers by going to the show notes, sportsgeekhq.com/377. And congrats again to the JackJumpers for winning their first NBL championship. A fairy tale is made, and like I said in the interview, you do make your own luck. So it's great to see basketball being a success in Tasmania. Before we wrap up, don't forget SEAT is coming back to Las Vegas, June 23 to 26. You can check it all out at seatconference.com. You can use the code SportsGeek, all one word, no spaces. Normally there's a space, but when it's a code, there's no space. SportsGeek for 10% off your registration. There's also group discounts available if you've got a team of 5 or more. It's a great way to get cross-training across all your different teams, whether they be in the technology space or data and BI, or the track that I like playing in the digital sponsorship and ticketing. So I'd love to see you at SEAT. It's where I've met a lot of my guests and a lot of my listeners at SEAT. So I hope to see you at SEAT Las Vegas. All SEAT Las Vegas attendees will get a special discounted Pick My Brain booking link, and anyone who uses the code SportsGeek will actually go in the running to win a free Pick My Brain session, which will be a great way for you to recap what you learned, some of the key takeaways from SEAT. Until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
Do you get Sports Geek news? Sean Callanan analyzes the latest sports business articles for you weekly. Sign up at sportsgeekhq.com. Want to help drive more revenue from your digital efforts? Book a time for a call. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call.